When a woman stands alone, people often misunderstand her. They think she's isolated, they think she's vulnerable, they think she needs rescuing. But they're wrong. Because the woman who stands alone is not alone because she has no one. She stands alone because she chooses to, because she refuses to lower her standards, silence her voice, or shrink her power just to fit into someone else's comfort zone. A woman becomes dangerous the moment she realizes that she does not need permission to exist boldly. She does not need approval to be who she is. She does not need validation to know her worth. She becomes dangerous when she stops negotiating her value and starts protecting her peace as if her life depends on it, because it does. You see, strength isn't built in comfort. It's built in the moments you think you can't survive but choose to rise anyway. It's built every time someone doubts you and you move forward regardless. It's built every time life throws a punch and you say, "Is that all you've got?" The dangerous woman isn't the loudest in the room. She isn't the one seeking attention or applause. She is the one who can walk away from anything, any person, any situation, any comfort if it costs her self-respect. That kind of woman is feared not because she hurts others, but because no one can control her. She stops chasing people. She stops over-explaining. She stops apologizing for taking up space. She learns how to sit with herself, her thoughts, her fears, her ambition, and she becomes someone even she never imagined. She sharpens her mind. She strengthens her boundaries. She commits to her growth with a discipline that terrifies those who depended on her weakness. A woman who stands alone learns the most important skill in life, self-trust. She knows that if everything collapses, if people leave, if the world changes, if circumstances turn against her, she will still be able to rebuild from the ground up. She has done it before, she can do it again. That kind of confidence cannot be taken, bought, or borrowed. It is earned in silence, in struggle, in solitude. And understand this. A woman becomes dangerous not when she becomes hard, but when she becomes clear. Clear about who she is, clear about what she deserves, clear about what she will no longer tolerate. Clarity makes her unstoppable. Clarity gives her vision. Clarity makes her step into rooms as if she belongs because she does. The world has always tried to tame women, to make them smaller, softer, easier to manage. But once a woman breaks through those invisible chains, once she realizes that her power was never given by others and therefore cannot be taken by others, that is when she becomes truly dangerous. She becomes a woman who stands with courage even when no one stands with her. A woman who chooses truth over comfort. A woman who walks away from what doesn't align with her purpose. A woman who can command respect without raising her voice. A woman who is not afraid to be alone because she has mastered the one person people spend their entire lives trying to avoid, herself. The most dangerous woman in the world is the one who stands alone, not because she wants to be alone forever, but because she refuses to depend on anything or anyone for her strength. She is self-made, self-driven, self-protected. And when she does decide to walk with others, she does it from a place of strength, not need. So if you are that woman, or becoming that woman, understand your power. Standing alone is not a weakness. It's your evolution. It's proof that you've stopped surviving and started leading. That is what makes you dangerous. A woman becomes dangerous the moment she stops seeking permission and starts trusting her own voice, because that single shift rewires everything inside her. It is the moment she realizes that the world has been conditioning her to look outward for approval from family, society, friends, partners, bosses, even strangers, when all along the power she needed was already within her. She understands that her voice is not something to be softened, adjusted, or reshaped to make others comfortable. It is something to be sharpened, strengthened, and exercised until it becomes unshakable. And when she reaches that point, her world changes because she is no longer moved by fear, guilt, or expectations. She becomes guided by her own inner compass, something far more stable and far more dangerous to anyone who thought they could influence her decisions. Trusting her voice means she stops asking, "Is this okay?" and starts saying, "This is who I am." It means she stops waiting for someone to co-sign her dreams. She stops depending on others to validate her choices. She refuses to let anyone rewrite her identity. And that shift is powerful because for the first time she begins living life on her own terms, not the terms handed to her by others. When a woman stops seeking permission, she stops being controlled, and anyone who relied on her doubt to manipulate her loses their leverage instantly. She becomes unpredictable in the best way. She moves when she decides, not when someone else pulls the strings. A woman who trusts her voice no longer fears standing out or standing alone. She stops diluting herself to blend in. She stops trying to be agreeable just to avoid conflict. She stops shrinking herself so others won't feel threatened by her strength. Instead, she starts using her voice to draw lines, to set standards, to choose what stays and what goes. That voice becomes a filter that protects her from anything that tries to drain her, distract her, or derail her. She learns to walk away quickly, quietly, and confidently because she trusts what she feels. She trusts what she senses, she trusts what she knows, and when a woman trusts her own intuition, she becomes nearly impossible to deceive. This inner voice also becomes her greatest weapon against doubt. Even when the world tells her she can't, her voice tells her she will. Even when people question her path, her voice reminds her why she started. Even when challenges appear impossible, her voice tells her to move forward anyway. She stops letting fear dictate her decisions because fear loses its grip once she realizes she has the strength to face it. She stops letting other people's opinions shape her choices because she knows that most opinions come from people who don't carry her responsibilities or live with her consequences. Her voice becomes her anchor, her shield, and her map. The woman who trusts her voice becomes dangerous because she can no longer be silenced. She no longer hesitates to speak truth where others stay quiet. She no longer hides her boundaries to avoid offending anyone. She no longer compromises her identity for acceptance. Her voice becomes steady even when everything around her shakes. She becomes the kind of woman who says what she means and means what she says. Nobody has to guess where she stands because she stands firmly, even if she stands alone. This kind of woman starts making decisions based on vision instead of fear. She allows herself to dream without limitations. She takes risks because she trusts her ability to recover. She takes responsibility for her life instead of waiting for someone else to save her. She becomes powerful, not because life becomes easier, but because she becomes stronger. The world reacts differently to a woman who believes in herself. Some admire her, some fear her, some try to stop her, but none can ignore her. She also becomes dangerous because she refuses to negotiate her worth. She no longer allows people to take advantage of her kindness. She no longer tolerates disrespect in any form. She no longer entertains anyone who tries to minimize her abilities. She knows exactly what she brings to the table and refuses to sit anywhere she is not valued. That certainty is intimidating to those who relied on her insecurity to maintain control, but freeing for her because she finally understands that respect is not something she begs for, it is something she demands through her decisions. Trusting her voice doesn't mean she never feels fear or doubt. It means she doesn't let those feelings stop her. She acknowledges them, listens to them, and moves forward anyway. She becomes the kind of woman who can walk into uncertainty with steady steps because she knows she can rely on herself. She becomes her own foundation, her own support system, her own strength. Even if the world falls apart, she remains standing because she built herself from the inside out. When a woman's voice becomes her guide, she becomes unshakable. People can leave, circumstances can change, opinions can shift, but her path stays clear because she no longer relies on external noise to define it. She trusts the quiet power within her. She trusts the lessons she learned. She trusts the strength she gained from every challenge she survived. And with that self-trust, she becomes unstoppable because nothing is more powerful than a woman who finally listens to herself. The most powerful woman is the one who can walk away from anything that costs her self-respect because she understands something. Most people spend a lifetime avoiding the truth that losing yourself is far worse than losing anything or anyone around you. She knows that peace built on self-betrayal is not peace at all. It is a slow destruction of the soul. And so she chooses the harder path, the braver path, the path where she refuses to compromise her dignity just to keep the illusion of harmony. This is the kind of woman who understands that her boundaries are not walls, they are doors that only open to those who treat her with the respect she has earned, not the tolerance she has been conditioned to accept. She becomes powerful the moment she realizes that staying in places where she's underestimated, used, or undervalued is not loyalty, it's self-abandonment, and she refuses to abandon herself ever again. She knows that when she accepts less than she deserves, she teaches others how to treat her. She knows that silence in the face of disrespect becomes permission for it to continue. So she speaks up even when her voice shakes. She walks away even when her heart aches. She chooses herself even when others call it selfish. She understands that protecting her spirit will always look like rebellion to those who benefited from her lack of boundaries. Walking away is not weakness for her, it is wisdom. She knows how to read energy. She knows when something is draining her more than it is feeding her. She recognizes when a situation is no longer aligned with the person she is becoming. Instead of clinging to what hurts her, she lets it go because she trusts that nothing good ever requires her to destroy herself to keep it alive. She has learned, sometimes through painful lessons, that not every connection is meant to stay, and not every history deserves a future. And she carries that truth with a graceful kind of strength, firm, quiet, unshakable. This kind of woman doesn't chase people who walk away from her, because she knows her worth does not decrease when someone fails to see it. She doesn't force relationships, friendships, or opportunities that require her to shrink. She doesn't beg for closure from people who had every chance to communicate. Her dignity won't allow her to turn herself into someone unrecognizable just to make another person stay. She knows that if keeping someone requires betraying herself, then losing them is not a loss, it's liberation. She becomes powerful because she is not afraid of being alone. Solitude does not intimidate her, it strengthens her. She uses it to reconnect with herself, to heal, to rebuild, to rise. She knows that some seasons require stepping back from noise, distractions, and people who drain her spirit. She honors those seasons without apology. And in that quiet space, she grows sharper, clearer, more grounded. She returns to the world not softer, but stronger, not desperate for connection, but selective with it, understanding that her energy is currency and she will no longer spend it cheaply. This woman is dangerous in the best way because she refuses to stay where she is not valued. She refuses to tolerate emotional crumbs just to feel companionship. She refuses to accept apologies without changed behavior. She refuses to pretend things are fine when her soul whispers otherwise. She trusts her intuition when it tells her to move on. She listens to her body when it reacts to environments that suffocate her. She trusts her heart when it urges her to choose freedom over familiarity. And that trust in herself gives her a sense of inner power that cannot be manipulated by fear or guilt. She also becomes powerful because she knows how to detach with love rather than bitterness. She does not need to hate someone to walk away. She does not need to prove a point or win an argument. She simply understands that her self-respect is worth more than the comfort of staying in places that require her to betray her truth. She can release people gracefully, even the ones she once cared for deeply, because she knows that holding on to what hurts only slows her down. She knows her life has chapters waiting to unfold, and she cannot step into them while clinging to doors that have already closed. The woman who can walk away places value on her peace above everything. She knows that no relationship, no job, no friendship, no opportunity is worth losing her inner balance. She never allows someone to dim her light just because they are uncomfortable being in the presence of a strong spirit. She does not bend herself out of shape to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. She understands that her self-respect is the foundation upon which every other part of her life is built. If she sacrifices that, everything else crumbles. Protecting it is not an option, it is a necessity. What makes her powerful is also her ability to stand firm in decisions others don't understand. She doesn't justify her choices to people who were never invested in her well-being. She doesn't beg for understanding because she knows not everyone has earned access to her truth. She moves with purpose, knowing that her path is hers alone. And even if the world misreads her strength as coldness, she is at peace because she knows that the ones meant to walk with her will understand her value without needing explanations. She has learned the art of choosing herself without guilt. She knows that prioritizing her mental and emotional well-being is not selfish, it is survival. She knows that she cannot pour into others from an empty cup. She knows that her life becomes richer, healthier, and more aligned the moment she stops allowing people to treat her like an option. Her willingness to walk away becomes a message. She is not afraid to lose what was never meant for her. The woman who can walk away stands in her power because she honors herself. And when a woman honors herself, she becomes unstoppable. No one can manipulate her through fear. No one can control her through guilt. No one can diminish her through disrespect. She knows who she is, what she deserves, and what she refuses to tolerate. And that self-respect becomes the force that shapes her entire life, guiding her into environments where she is valued, relationships where she is cherished, and futures where she is free to become everything she was meant to be. Solitude builds clarity, and clarity creates a woman no one can control, because when a woman learns to sit with herself, she discovers truths that the noise of the world was always trying to distract her from. In the quiet, she begins to understand what she truly wants, what she truly feels, and what she truly deserves. She starts separating her own voice from the expectations of others. She starts identifying which beliefs were hers and which were planted in her by people who never understood her potential. Solitude becomes the forge where she melts down everything false and shapes herself into something real, strong, and unshakable. A woman who embraces solitude is not running away from the world, she is returning to herself. She is learning to trust her own company, to find comfort in her own thoughts, to build a relationship with herself that becomes the foundation of her strength. She no longer fears being alone because she realizes that loneliness is not the absence of people, it is the absence of self. Once she reconnects with who she truly is, she stops feeling empty when the room is silent. She finds peace in that silence. She begins to enjoy it, and that peace becomes something she refuses to sacrifice for anyone. Clarity is the gift that solitude gives her. It sharpens her judgment. It reveals who is genuine and who is pretending. It exposes the relationships she kept out of habit instead of love. It shows her the places she stayed out of fear instead of desire. It makes her see the patterns she once ignored, the boundaries she once failed to set, the red flags she once justified. Clarity becomes her internal compass, guiding her away from everything that drains her and toward everything that strengthens her. As she grows clearer, she also grows less tolerant of chaos. She stops entertaining people who bring confusion into her life. She becomes allergic to inconsistency, dishonesty, and half-hearted effort. She begins to see through manipulation and emotional games because clarity sharpens her intuition until it becomes impossible for anyone to deceive her. She trusts her instincts more. She trusts her observations more. She stops doubting herself because clarity has shown her that she was right about more things than she ever gave herself credit for. Clarity also gives her the courage to choose better for herself. She stops settling for relationships that exhaust her or environments that belittle her. She stops accepting excuses from people who refuse to grow. She stops allowing others to dictate her worth. She becomes selective not because she is difficult, but because she understands that her energy, her time, and her heart are valuable. Only people who match her intentions, her honesty, and her respect are allowed into her life. Everyone else gets filtered out with quiet but firm precision. This kind of woman is impossible to control because she no longer seeks approval from others. She no longer adjusts her personality to fit in. She no longer hides her power to make others feel comfortable. She knows who she is, and that self-knowledge becomes armor. People who once influenced her choices suddenly have no power over her. Their opinions no longer carry weight. Their disapproval no longer shakes her. Their manipulation no longer works. She becomes mentally untouchable because her clarity has revealed her true value. Solitude has taught her that dependence is a choice, not a necessity. She knows she can survive on her own. She knows she can rebuild if everything collapses. She knows she can walk away from anything that threatens her peace. And that kind of independence makes her presence a gift, not a requirement. People cannot control a woman who doesn't need them to feel whole. They cannot hold her hostage with fear of abandonment. They cannot keep her small by withholding attention. Her strength is internal, self-generated, and deeply rooted. Clarity also brings emotional balance. She becomes aware of her triggers, her wounds, and her patterns. She understands why she reacts the way she does, and she learns how to respond instead of react. She stops letting emotions rule her decisions. She becomes calm under pressure, steady in conflict, focused in chaos. This calmness unsettles people who rely on emotional manipulation because they can no longer push her buttons. She refuses to be provoked. She refuses to be rushed. She refuses to be pulled into drama that does not belong to her. Her peace becomes her power, and her composure becomes her shield. A woman with clarity also becomes committed to growth. She uses solitude to improve herself, to educate her mind, to strengthen her character. She invests in learning, discipline, and self-development. She becomes aware of her weaknesses without being ashamed of them, and she works on them with quiet strength. She becomes aware of her strengths without bragging about them, and she uses them with intention. Growth becomes her lifestyle, and because of this, she is never stuck in the same place for too long. She evolves, And her evolution makes her harder and harder to control because she refuses to remain who she was yesterday just to satisfy someone else's comfort. She also becomes dangerous in a powerful way because she becomes emotionally self-sufficient. She appreciates love but does not collapse without it. She values connection but does not beg for it. She enjoys companionship but does not depend on it for happiness. This balance makes her someone who chooses, not someone who chases. She becomes a woman who can give love freely because she no longer gives it from a place of fear or insecurity. She gives it from a place of strength, and that strength makes her a partner, a friend, a human being of depth and integrity. Clarity makes her voice stronger. She speaks with purpose, not doubt. She stands firm in her boundaries. She is unafraid to say no. She is unafraid to say yes to opportunities that challenge her to grow. Her decisions are deliberate, thoughtful, aligned with her values. She no longer moves out of obligation but out of intention. She no longer seeks to please others at the cost of her peace. Her life becomes directed by truth rather than pressure, by authenticity rather than expectation. The woman who has built clarity through solitude becomes unbreakable because she finally understands herself. She knows what nourishes her and what drains her. She knows what she wants to build and what she must leave behind. She knows her purpose, her principles, her worth. And once a woman knows herself with that level of honesty and depth, she becomes someone no one can ever control because she is guided not by fear, not by approval, not by pressure, but by a clarity that comes from within.